Hi, I'm Michelle Pion, the office manager here at Bilingual Source, and today we're diving into a topic that all job seekers want to get right, the do's and don'ts of resumes. And I'm joined by two of my amazing colleagues here. We have Madi Jafar, our vice president.
Hello.
And Vernon Carbonell, one of our recruitment managers. Madi's been with the company for nearly 17 years now, and Vernon has about 7 years under his belt too. So between the two of them, they've reviewed thousands of resumes and probably seen just about everything. So they're going to answer some of the most common questions that job seekers face when they're preparing or polishing their CVs. What to avoid, what to include, what might make your resume stand out or get overlooked. So let's dive into it.
Absolutely.
All right, so what is one of the biggest red flags you've seen on a resume, or most common error?
I think for me, it's misstating the resume, meaning you haven't really documented the actual dates on the resume properly. I'll give you an example. If you put 2024 to 2025, that could be 3 months, or it could be a year and a half. So it's very important to put the month and then the year, and then make sure that you have a start and end date. Unless you're presently working there, you document that you're at present with the company.
Yeah, and be specific. That makes sense. And Bert?
Yeah, I would say fonts are definitely something that jump out at me when there is misalignment or there's multiple fonts used. It certainly sticks out like a sore thumb, unless of course they're trying to sequence it with the rest of their resume and everything is nicely formatted. The fonts are super important, a nice uniform font.
Right, that would signal to me if I saw two different fonts, that would signal to me that maybe someone had Googled something and copy pasted or ChatGPT. Right?
Absolutely, especially in the age of AI.
Yeah. Well, let's touch on design and presentation. Headshot or no headshot?
I'll take this one. So definitely for the most part, I would say no headshot. It firstly takes up a lot of space on the CV that could be used for other purposes. And unless you're working in a client-facing role, perhaps out of a hospitality-based sector, it wouldn't really make sense to include a headshot, in my opinion.
Gotcha. So should there be a graphic design, like a nice design on a resume, or very bare bones?
I'd say generally you want to focus on the skill set at hand. However, if you're a graphic designer or you're someone that wants to showcase a portfolio or some of your design work, I would include it on the resume.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's talk about the nicest resume you've ever seen.
I'll take this one. I remember one of the very first candidates I placed at Bilingual Source. She had the most stunning CV. It looks like this. Just the functionality, the way that it's easily digestible. She also managed to fit everything on one page. Definitely, to this day, 7 years later, still rings as the nicest resume I've ever seen.
Wow, stuck in your mind, eh?
Absolutely.
Let's touch on structure and content. So overall layout, what should be on there? Can you help us tackle that, Madi?
Absolutely. Number one, keep your resume to 2 pages or less.
Okay.
In terms of the content, what I'd recommend you do is at the top, put a nice professional summary outlining your qualifications, your experience, and then follow that up with your education. Have that right near the top so people can see if you've completed, a degree, a specific certificate. After that, you want to have your experience and qualifications and the time that you spent with each of your companies. And then right at the bottom there, you'd want to have any sort of personal achievements that you'd want an interviewer or potential manager to look at. And that would really be it, I would say.
Okay, perfect. Let's follow up on education. High school, should it definitely be on there? Some people think maybe I don't need it.
I'd absolutely put the highest level of completed education on your resume.
Okay, amazing. And if you went to a French high school too, that would be a good thing to mention, especially in terms of bilingualism, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'd highlight that for sure.
Now for post-sec, if someone didn't complete university or college, should they still include that?
I think it's worth putting on there. All I would do is put incomplete in brackets next to it so that the person considering your resume is aware of that. It shows that you have committed to some post-secondary training. So any sort of additional education is valuable.
And how about when someone gets promoted? Should you show that promotion? Should it be a whole separate section or kind of all together?
I'd put an additional section. When you're promoted, you're often given additional duties, tasks, responsibilities. You might be managing a group or a team. It's important to show that distinction.
Just to add, Monty, I definitely think that it's important to separate those two because it'll show your promotability and the potential that you bring to the table. Typically, when I see a CV and it shows that someone's been promoted, sometimes several times within the first couple of years, I'm already thinking that's an excellent candidate.
Shows their growth, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Okay, so in this day and age, a lot of people have 2, maybe even 3 jobs. Chronologically, how does someone tackle that on the resume? What order should they put things? And if someone is a contractor as well, should they list that? Should they that?
Vern, feel that?
Yeah, definitely I think it's important to list all of the transferable and appropriate CV. For instance, if they have 3 jobs at any given time and they're applying to a corporate customer service role, I'd probably list the roles that are most full-time and most applicable to that particular position they're applying for. In the event that they'd like to list all of their experience, just make sure that it's dated chronologically with the most recently started experience at the top to present. And I think it's super helpful when a candidate sort of shows that they're working a particular role in a part-time function or capacity versus full-time. That way it takes away any guesswork.
So I noticed when we talked about outline, you didn't mention hobbies. Should that not be on there? Are we not including hobbies, extracurriculars?
You know what, Michelle, that's a loaded question.
Okay.
I would say it depends on where you are in your career.
Mm.
If you're someone trying to enter the corporate workforce, it's not a bad idea to throw some hobbies on there to get a sense of who you are.
Right.
If you're further along in your career and a company's looking for a very specific skill set, there may be more of a focus on what you bring to the table from a corporate perspective versus the hobbies. So it really does sort of depend. And then lastly, if you are applying for a position, as an example, let's say with Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, you play hockey and basketball on the side and you're part of a fantasy draft that happens annually. Maybe that's something you want to highlight.
Definitely. Well, that's relative to the role itself. And then even beyond that, we spend, on average 40 hours a week with our colleagues. So you want to know that you have a good personal fit, right? With
Absolutely.
your eventual team. Is there a specific title we should include as hobbies preferred over extracurriculars? Is there a preferred title there?
I think either or is good. It's just to highlight the fact that, there's more to you outside of the resume.
And I personally would like to see a hobby on a resume. It would help me to connect with the person I'm interviewing. What's a particular hobby you like to see on a resume that could have you chatting with someone for a long time?
In all honesty, I just love to see that there is something else to the person and it opens up a conversation. So it could be Dungeons and Dragons, it could be basketball. I just like to see that there's more to the person than, often just what's on the resume.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. I love to see a marathon runner on there, personally. Shows they're really dedicated, that they can push through pain, mentally probably very tough, and dedicated, persistent with their training. And that usually translates into the workplace, I would say.
Absolutely.
So Monty, you mentioned the profile summary that should be right at the top there. In the past, some people may have included an objective, kind of like a goal. Is that out now? And can we talk a little bit more about that profile summary?
Sure. I think that, an objective works, but I think the profile summary is probably better because you're able to include a more comprehensive look at all of the highlights of your candidacy. And then I would also highly recommend tailoring your profile summary to the particular type of role that you're applying for so that you're essentially giving the employer, recruiter, all the incentive they need to be able to interview you.
That's definitely key. Yeah, I would say that's probably one of your top tips you like to give about resumes in general.
100%,
Right? Yeah.
especially in the current market condition.
All right, references available upon request. Yes or no? Is it key or is it just wasting valuable space?
Me personally, I don't think it's an absolute must. It is a nice one-liner to note that you do have references ready to go. I will highlight though that whenever you're applying for a job, you have contacted and reached out to all of your references and make sure that they're lined up. Inevitably, a company's going to ask to connect with a couple of references and you want them ready to go and accessible, right? So that when the time comes, you can land that job without a problem.
And they should expect, those references should expect that call, not be surprised by that call.
Absolutely. Make sure that they're lined up and ready to go. Doesn't need to be stated on the resume, but it's a nice touch.
Vernon, would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit juvenile to put on the CV, but I do think that it's a given that if you are applying for a corporate job in today's day and age, references are the bare minimum, and having them ready to go and easily contactable is super important as well.
Okay, address now. A lot of people can feel iffy about sharing their personal information about too much. Should it be on there? Why?
Yeah, so definitely I think if you're working with a recruiter, first and foremost, it'll certainly be helpful for that recruiter to be able to bring the right roles to your attention based on your location. I know the commute for a lot of candidates can be tricky, and they, for the most part, do prefer something more local, but it's not mandatory by any means. Another alternative is postal code. Which helps keep things a bit more anonymous, but certainly advantageous to throw your address to the degree you feel comfortable on there.
And I think the way our system is built too, we can search concentrically based on that postal code that
Absolutely.
we mentioned. So we can make matches a lot faster and find you something a little bit closer to home.
Awesome, because that's what we want in the end. We want people to be happy. We want short commute times, even though it might mean, you know, your precious podcast listening time or carpool karaoke. But that's what we want, right? We want candidates to find that perfect fit and a short commute time, ideally.
Absolutely.
How long do employers actually spend reading a resume?
Not very long. From my experience, of course, I think it's hard to give a calculated answer for that. But definitely having a very easily digestible resume that, you know, can be functional and also informative are super important. I'd say probably like under a minute in my experience dealing with resumes. It's just a quick glance over, making sure that all the main points are ticked off.
Okay, keep it digestible. So earlier, Vernon, you mentioned typos, and you both know me pretty well at this point. High attention to detail. How important is that? Do you disqualify someone immediately? Is that a no for you once you see a typo?
Great question. I think if there's one typo on the resume and the rest of the CV is flawless, then I don't hold it against the candidate that I'm working with. I simply let them know and then they go and amend it. Now, if it's a consistent pattern, it sort of implies a lack of attention to detail, at which point that's a red flag, and I probably wouldn't be as incentivized to work with that candidate, and much less an employer be incentivized to interview that candidate.
Right, that makes sense. I struggle with this because we are all human, so we might make a mistake. But at the same time, we do have AI, so you could easily run your resume through ChatGPT, for instance, and say, just list any errors, highlight any errors to make sure you've caught everything. My top tip, besides AI, or if you're not comfortable with AI, is to, number one, leave your resume alone overnight. Let's say you've worked on it for a few hours, leave it alone, go back to it the next day. And beyond that, have your friend or family member who has the most high attention to detail review it for you, too.
I think that's a great idea, Michelle. If I was putting a resume together, I'd send it to you.
For typos, at least.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about comparing LinkedIn profile to a resume. Should they match up? Let's dive into that.
I'd say 90% of our employers look at LinkedIn
Mhm.
and compare it to the resume. make sure they match up. There's no sense in having one that's completely different from the other. Everyone is on LinkedIn these days.
That's helpful for sure. Amazing. Well, those are all the questions that I had for today. Lottie, Vernon, thank you so much for taking the time to share your expertise. We hope that anyone watching, this helped you make you feel more confident about your resume and a little less in the dark about putting your best foot forward. If you'd like to connect with Maudie or Vernon or any of our other amazing recruiters for help with your resume or your job search, don't hesitate to reach out. And if there are any other questions you were hoping to hear answered today, leave it in the comments. We'd love to help.